Going through family court and fighting for custody when you have an order of protection against you. What's going on, guys? Today's video, I kind of just want to go through, and now that I can finally share this because my order of protection finally expired this past week. And honestly, it was like a big giant weight had been lifted off my shoulders, because I can't tell you how heavy of a burden that order of protection was. And I'll get into specifics and let you know exactly why it burdened my life so much. So just first and foremost, I do want to say that, like, if you're going through this right now, there is the possibility of, there is light at the end of the tunnel, but it's all going to come down to how you react to it, how you navigate through this time. So again, you can only control what you can control. Try to cool down the stuff on your end, because honestly, nobody wants to keep fighting if you're not, like, returning fire. So a couple years ago, or actually it's like four and a half years ago at this point, my ex and I broke up. This was like the final straw. We broke up and got back together many times before, so in my eyes it's just one of those circumstances. So shortly after that, I got served with custody papers, seeking custody. And at this point, my son was my first and he's my only child. So I had no experience with being a father on my own. In those early years, I went to work all the time. I watched my son during the day, but like doing the whole single dad thing by myself just wasn't even an idea. And honestly, growing up not having the best parents, I was truly terrified of doing this on my own. So I got an attorney. I picked a pretty bad attorney. He left a lot of gray areas in the custody agreement, which led up to a lot of future issues that led to future problems. So that happened, and in that time frame, I agreed to the custody agreement thinking that it was just going to be a formality. Unfortunately, it wasn't a formality, so like that became what was set. And as we started to be more contentious with each other and more toxic and more combative, and we kept lobbing shots back and forth, I filed papers to amend the custody agreement. And I wanted to fight for more rights to my son. But this is why I tell you guys that in the first stage, you need to make sure that you're getting everything you want. It's all in black and white, because at this point, you can only change the agreement based on what has happened since the original agreement was signed. So basically, all the stuff I wanted to bring up from before was nullified, because we signed to an agreement and I agreed to it at that point and signed it. So that's why you need to be cognizant of, when you sign your first custody agreement, make sure you're putting everything in black and white, and there's no gray areas and no interpretation. So that agreement was signed. We started to get contentious. I wanted to get back with her. Found out she was dating somebody, and the next day I was served with an order of protection. And the basis of the order of protection was, one day she was feeling sick, and I thought that she was maybe pregnant with our second kid, and she wasn't feeling well. So I went over and I tried to help out, and basically she told me to go away, and I didn't. And it wasn't like violent, it wasn't anything bad like that, but she didn't want me there. So she called the police, and I was outside, and they came and they're like, well, you're not doing anything wrong, so it's okay. But then a couple days later, an order of protection was served, and the basis of the order of protection was that she feared for her safety because of me, and because I'm in the military, that I had access to weapons, and she didn't feel safe knowing that. So the courts gave her the order of protection, and basically without any fact findings. This is what family court does. Like, if you put something down, the court will basically give you I think it's called ex parte, and basically it goes into effect immediately until you guys are able to go to court. And at this point, I got it, and I was like, I thought this was silly. This has been something been used against me before, but she never followed through on any of it. Basically, just, it says like no violence or anything like that, which had never been an issue for me anyways. Like, I never even called her a name at this point. But I got served with that. And then I tried to have conversations with her about our son. And then she filed a violation basically saying that I was harassing her, which was pretty loosely interpreted. Basically being like, hey, can you do this with our son? Can you do that? And that was taken as harassment. So she filed the violation. And then like when we were trying to do the custody agreement, and again, this is why it's important to get black and white when it comes to your custody agreement, is there is no specification for who does drop-offs, who does pickups, where the drop-offs are. So as we got more and more toxic and we became more combative, like having these cordial drop-offs just stopped existing. And then she started dating somebody, and that became an issue. And so she filed a violation, and basically the second violation subseded the first one, and that one said like no communication at all. So basically like a stay away order, which I thought was ridiculous because they didn't even do any fact finding. They basically just took one side's account without actually hearing the other side. So I called police to do a custody agreement or custody exchange, which was pretty ridiculous in my mind now. Like I thought was, when I look back at my own actions, I think that was pretty petty. So if I could learn anything from that, it would be to stop like raising the temperature when it came to these things, because when you're in this time, you're so emotional that like you're trying to do everything you can to like counteract what's coming at you, and then you go above it and it just keeps getting higher and higher and higher. So like in retrospect, my self-awareness wasn't as high then. So what happened was basically this violation said no texting, no calling, no in-person communication, basically a complete stay away order. And I had to talk through a third party, which was so ridiculous, and like what a horrible thing. So what happened was I like recorded the situation. And then I screenshot the conversation basically saying I'm here, and when she didn't come out, I tried to send it to my sister, basically showing her what I was dealing with. And instead of texting my sister, I accidentally texted my ex, which immediately violated the order of protection. So that happened. And like on iPhones, you can unsend messages once you send them, and I did that. But unfortunately, it was sent, so it was received on her phone and her watch, on her Apple Watch. So she saw the message, I deleted it, it said unsent message. And a couple days later, she called the police and filed a violation. And about 2 days later, a police officer called me and said that I'd violated and that you were being arrested, but you can turn yourself in. After I sent the text message on accident, I called the officer the day that they did the custody exchange, and I basically told him what happened, and she's like, well, hopefully she doesn't do anything, but she did violate. So this time wasn't as bad because I was able to turn myself in, so I didn't have to deal with the whole arrest thing. But so they're like, you need to turn yourself in, you need to go to the police station. So I go to the police station, they bring me in, they start fingerprinting me, they take my mugshot, and like it felt so horrible, and there aren't even really words to describe like that feeling to that point. So basically they filed charges against me, and they called the judge, and he said that he didn't think that I was a safety risk. So they set my arraignment, or my whatever it is that your initial time seeing the judge, they pushed it out a few weeks. I showed up to the first day of court, didn't have an attorney, and I showed them basically all the stuff that I was paying, and I was going through a custody case right now, and I was able to get a public defender, which thank God I was able to. But basically the charges were that I violated the order of protection through this text message that I sent that I unsent. So there wasn't actually a body to it. It was an accidental text message. I had like the phone call with the cop. I had the conversation with my sister basically saying like, this is what I meant to do, and I screenshot that. And I had criminal charges against me, and I had to start going to court, and every time I would go there, they would adjourn it till a couple months later. So like this went on and on and on for a couple months. So I'm going through this criminal process for a violation of order of protection. I'm going to family court for custody. I'm going to family court for an order of protection, because once you violate, like, the order of protection still stands on its own, but then like the criminal part of it stands over here. So these are two completely separate entities. So I go to court and I give my attorney, and I'm like, I really need to fight this, because if I have an order of protection against me, that pretty much throws out any opportunity for like my side of the story being heard in family court, like for my custody. So I get my attorney, we go to court, and he did like a completely horrible job representing me. And he told me, basically, he's like, she wants order of protection against you. You can accept it without any cause. So basically, they're like, you're accepting this order of protection, but it's not saying you actually did anything wrong. You're just admitting to stay away from this person. I'm like, I really feel uncomfortable with that. And he's like, well, this is the best thing. It's not going to affect your custody agreement. It's without cause. And I was like, fine, whatever. So I accept that. That's the original 2-year one. I think that was in 2020. I'm trying to put the timeline together. This is 2022. So I accept that one, and it was supposed to expire in, I think July 2024, or maybe earlier. I can't remember. But it kept getting pushed out, and like the worst part about it is that when I went to family court, like the things that kept getting lobbed at me was he's pending criminal action, he's got an order of protection against him, and like in family court's eyes, I was guilty until proven innocent. But those accusations kept being like thrown at me and thrown about me, and like all these things are being said about me that weren't true. And the hard part about family court is that you can't react, and you can't defend yourself, and you can't say anything, because if you say something, then you're basically showing that you're not able to control your temper, and then you're basically saying like this is needed against you. So that kept going on. Signed the order. So now that was set in stone that I had an order of protection against me. So family court's a little different. It's not on your record, but like if you violate, it can be considered criminal. So they gave me the option when I was in the criminal part of it, that they're like, you can do a judge alone case, or you can do a jury trial. And I told them, I was like, I mean, based on public perception of like these type of things, I'd rather the judge take the information, hear both sides, and then make his decision on what he thinks is the best. So it was a misdemeanor charge, for harassment or whatever, for violation. So we go to the case, and they hear both sides. I go on the stand, she goes on the stand, and then they look at all the facts. And then when they were all done, the judge said I was not guilty. And like I started crying, like, because the stress and like that this brought to me, like I can't even describe. So that was dropped, but I still had the family court and the family court order of protection against me. So at this point, me and my ex weren't even talking at all, and we were using a third-party app, and things were still pretty toxic, and it was constantly like, you need to do this, 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 and it was so unhealthy. But the one thing I will say that I try to emphasize to you guys is try to separate the time when you're with your kids, when you do have them, with the family court stuff. Like don't interlock those two things. So I was able to do the dad stuff, not talk about family court, give the best I could to my son, and create this base of my son and I's relationship. So that was still pretty special. So it's a weird phase of my life where it's like I'm having these amazing memories and experiences with my son, but I'm also going through hell over here in court. So basically my son was coming up to his well visit for his, I think it was his birthday. No, it wasn't his birthday. It was because it was fall time. So basically, my son was going to the doctors. It was during my parenting time, so I told my ex, I was like, "Can we meet at the doctors and do our custody exchange there?" And she didn't respond. Didn't respond for like 2 weeks. So I'm like, you know what? It's right down the road from my office. I'll just show up there. I'll say, hey, let's do the exchange there. So I get to the doctor's office and I'm sitting on the other side of the parking lot. And I'm like, I'm out here whenever you want to bring him out. So a couple minutes go by and two police cars pull up and they put their lights on and they come over, knock on my window and say that I violated an order of protection, and they have me get out of the car, handcuff me, and arrest me. The cops didn't even give me the opportunity to even show them my custody agreement and basically say, hey, this is my parenting time. Like, I'm here for a custody exchange. Again, the system, I understand why it is, because I see a lot of the stuff that goes on in the world, and I see a lot of the violence that comes from men, so I understand it from that standpoint. But in the family court and the criminal justice system, we are all judged by the very worst of us. So if a guy does all this horrible violent stuff, it's the same. They look at the guy that is not doing any of that stuff and they look at the two the same. So again, they handcuffed me, they put me in the back of the car. Like, they left my car running, they left my phones and my work phone and my personal phone in my car. And I get to jail and I'm just like, I can't even describe what I felt in that moment. Like, I felt so dehumanized and I felt horrible, and I thought I was gonna lose my job, and I thought I was gonna lose my son, and I thought that I was never gonna get to see him again. And I thought all this stuff, and I don't even know how to explain it. Like, I'm lost for words at how I felt in that moment. I go to jail, they handcuff me, they fingerprint me again, they take my mugshot again, they put me in a jail cell, and I sit there for a little while. And then they call the judge, and he's like, he's not a threat. So they adjourned it, and then I came in for the arraignment. And then this time, I actually went and got a criminal defense attorney. And I told him the situation, told him all the other stuff that happened, and shared with him the documents, shared with him all the text messages, showed him kind of where our case had been at this point, that what we were dealing with. And he's like, you shouldn't have accepted that order of protection, because at this point it had been used as nothing as but a weapon against me. So she brought charges against me, and again, I didn't do anything wrong. I never yelled at her, never put her in any dangerous positions, but because of the wording of the order of protection, me just showing up to do a custody exchange was considered a criminal act. So I was served a violation and a criminal misdemeanor charge, and I went to the court with my attorney, and we adjourned it, and they went over all the facts, and I basically told them that I wanted the charges dismissed, and they went over it, and they talked to the prosecutor, and they wanted to throw the book at me. And again, judged by the worst of us, regardless of what I did, but they wanted to file charges against me. And after doing all the fact finding, my attorney was awesome. This attorney was actually really great, so I'm very grateful for him. But basically, he went through all the facts, looked at the facts and the evidence, and then basically he went to the judge, he went to the other attorney, and they were like, this is being used as a weapon. It's not being used as a shield. It's being used as a weapon, an offensive weapon. So they look at it and they saw the facts, and they're like, okay, this is probably not being used for what it needs to be. So luckily this didn't go to a trial, even though it could have gone to that point. but I got like the second best thing, which is an ACD, which is an acquittal in contemplation of dismissal. So basically, they gave me a year time frame where they said, like, if you don't do anything wrong from this time to this time, 1 year, when it gets to that date, basically your charges are dismissed, and it's like the case never happened. As much as I want it to be dismissed like completely, the next best thing was the ACD, because then it just kind of went away. But I had to pay all this money towards my attorney. Luckily, he was pretty good with me, and he let me pay in payments. So I was very grateful for that. But he did an awesome job and made sure that it got brought down to as little as possible. And this is kind of where I want to go with this, is how these orders of protection can be used to kind of ruin a man or a father's life, because it brought up so many challenges, like personally, professionally. Like, first you have to, like, dating was almost impossible, because like, how do you date when you're going through all this stuff, family court, order of protection, criminal stuff, and then like my professional stuff at this point. Like, as soon as I got those arrests, I went and talked to my command, because I was still in the Army at this time. Like, they immediately suspended my my security clearance, so like I couldn't do any of my military stuff, and like I had to wait until pending action was done against me before, like, they wanted to find out what happened first before they did anything. So my security clearance was suspended. I was supposed to get out, and I wanted to get out at this time so I could spend more time with my son. And basically that prolonged it, and that opened up another set of like difficulties down the road, because the Army ended up basically saying, like, you shouldn't have been here, you shouldn't have been working, even though they told me to do. So I ended up garnishing my wages down the road for me coming in and doing my duty as I was commanded to. But that's a different story down the road. But so I lost that. And at that time, I was also looking for a new job, and, you know, trying to find a new job, knowing you have pending criminal actions against you. Like, when I went to my job, I was like, I've always been a person of integrity. So, I told the employers, like, I'm like, listen, I'm going through some family court stuff right now. The job required a background check, and I'm like, just so you know, you might find something on there, but this is what's going on. And I was truthful and honest about it, and thankfully they ended up hiring me. But then I had to go through that stress of waiting for the background check to go through, and I was like, is my life gonna be ruined because of this? And up until this point, I was still going through the family court stuff, and every time I'd go there, they'd be like, he's pending criminal action, and in family court I'm being painted as a criminal. So luckily that was dismissed, but then we go to family court, and it's supposed to be trial day for custody. And when I first originally filed my papers, I filed that I wanted 100% custody. But then I changed my tune, and I changed 50-50. I thought that would be the best, and like the opposite was pitched from opposing counsel, of like basically taking everything away from me. So I get to court, and my attorney said, when I accepted the first one, hey, this isn't going to be used against you because you're basically not admitting any guilt. And I was like, okay, that's fine. So we get all the evidence together, all the text messages, all that. I get witnesses, basically character witnesses, and witnesses to me as a father. And here's the other thing too. At no point in the family court process did they ever ask, hey, what kind of father are you? What kind of things do you do with your kid? What kind of things do you teach your son? What kind of food do you feed him? What kind of experiences do you do? None of that was ever asked in any of it. And then the attorney for my son was only 4, so anything he would say was inconsequential because he's very influential, and basically he couldn't really speak for himself at this point. So we get to the court and I'm ready for trial, and um, basically the judge says, just so you know, if we go through with this trial, uh, it's going to be whoever wins is going to get 100% custody, full custody. And just so you know, I will be using the fact that you have an order of protection against you. I'm going to use that in my decision-making process. And I was like, so, like, no matter what I do, like, I have to have a slam dunk, and I just didn't have a slam dunk. Like, if I would have went through with that, I would have lost everything. I would have lost my son. I would never see him. I'd be basically at the mercy of that situation. And I was like, I can't do that. I can't lose my son. I can't. It's not even a possibility. So my attorney goes and talks to him. We agree on the original custody agreement. We agree on modifications and black and white, and then we walk away. So the custody part was done, thank God. And the family court order of protection was still going on. Or no. So that concluded. I was done with that horrible attorney. And then, like, in the weeks moving forward, again, the new custody agreement still had black and gray areas in it. So I filed some violations, and she filed some violations for the order of protection again, but on the family court side, so they weren't criminal, but they were like stuff that had to be heard in front of the judge. So I filed some violations, and I basically made a cry for help on Facebook. I'm like, I need help. Up to this point, I spent like $50,000 on a family court attorney, and he did pretty much nothing. Like, he basically just took my money, didn't really do a good job putting fact finding together, didn't really present anything in court, like, added no value to the whole situation. This is why it's important to make sure that you have somebody that can guide you through these situations, because they will gouge you financially without very little return on investment. So luckily one of my buddies from the Army, that because being in a JAG unit, he was medically retired, and he ended up taking me on pro bono, thank God. And he was the one that gave me the advice of cooling down the temperature and like allowing stuff. So we go to court for the violations for the custody agreement and for the order of protection, and our attorneys talk, and they basically agree that, like, hey, we'll wipe out these violations and we'll move forward. So me and my attorney don't show up to court because we think that the court dates aren't going to happen. So they go there, and because we didn't show up, the judge signed a execution of the order of protection. And when basically my attorney's like, we said we were throwing these out, and so they end up moving the date, but the order of protection was signed into effect. And so we go to court, and the attorneys talk before we go in front of the judge, and they come up with an agreement. And then my opposing counsel wanted the order of protection to continue, a new one. Up at this point, it had already been 2 years since the first one had been signed, or almost 2 years. And basically the new one, because the old one basically said I couldn't be within 50 feet. I couldn't be within like 100 feet or something like that, 50 feet. I can't remember what the exact distance was. And I couldn't talk to her, only through a third party. But the one they agreed upon was there's no distance, like, but you guys can be within like talking distance to each other for like custody exchanges, but you still can't talk. You can't talk on the phone, you can't talk in person, you can't talk on FaceTime. And this passed with my son too, so like we couldn't like call each other so that he could talk on the phone with us, because my attorney's like, do not test these, because you've seen in the past that how easy it is to get a violation, get arrested for it. So he's like, don't even think about it. So I didn't realize that basically they said the thing, like, you guys can talk, you can be around each other, but it's gonna be for 2 years. I was like, 2 years? Are you kidding me? Like, That means by the time all this is done, it's been 4 years of us no talking. And yeah, I didn't realize that it wasn't going to be no in-person talking. So we dealt with that. We signed it. You know, the temperature started to lower, and we could text. That was basically we could only text. That was the only communication that was allowed, texting only. So for like the next 2 years, we started to get a better relationship. We texted about things that involved our son and kind of doing stuff in the best nature of him, in the best interest of him. But we couldn't talk. So like had all these awkward moments where we'd go to like a family, or we'd go to like a school function or a school meeting or doctor's appointments, and like we couldn't talk to each other. We could be in the same room, we could be across the table, but I couldn't say a word to her. And with orders of protection, they can talk to you. They can't. A person that files the violation or the order cannot violate their own order of protection. So they can talk to you, they can do whatever, but if you react or you do anything, that's a violation. So the last year or so, like again, like it was a normal relationship. We have a normal co-parenting relationship, and this past week, the order of protection finally expired. So there's no orders of protection anymore, and now we can go back to communicating. But it's been 4 years since I've talked to my ex in person, and like it's still hard to navigate of talking, but having that be off my shoulder, not to constantly worry, am I saying the wrong thing in the text? Can it be misconstrued in the wrong way? Like that's stress, and how much just one mistake or error can throw your life into a huge loop. Like that's what I want to share with you guys is like, I understand if you're going through this right now, I understand. Like it is hell. Like I can't tell you the emotional stress that I felt in this time. I can't tell you the physical stress that I felt in this time. But I leaned into my faith and I trusted God, and I was like, God, I know I'm not these things that's being put out in front of this. I stayed consistent with the parenting. I created a good relationship with my son, and that consistency showed, so that like when the temperature finally did cool down, like at least my ex is like, he's a good father. Like, and all the narrative went away. So like things can and will get better, but you have to be the driving force of it. So that's my advice to you guys is try to cool down, control what you can control. The system's not for you, so put yourself in the best position where it's not going to destroy you, because you can ruin your moment, you can ruin your life in one split decision. You know, again, I sent a wrong text, it led to me being arrested. I showed up for a custody exchange when it could be misinterpreted, and I got arrested. Like, and I went through this for 4 years. But again, now my relationship with her is great. We have a great co-parenting relationship, and things couldn't be better. And honestly, I'm a better father because of all this. I'm a better person because of all this. And my son has the best of both parents now. And I'm thankful that he was young enough that he doesn't really remember any of this. But I truly want you guys to learn from my lessons and my mistakes. And if you're going through this right now, calm yourself down. Don't allow things to let you lose what you love most. So that's basically all I want to say, guys. That's my story. That's my story, dealing with the order of protection, going through family court, dealing with all the stress, financial, physical, mental, emotional. Again, I gained a lot of weight in this time period. I lost some hair, I thinned out, I got gray hairs. I couldn't really date, and I still struggle with that. So, but that's my story. If you liked it, or if you stayed to the end, please like this video. If you got anything out of it, please share it with a dad that could use it. And please subscribe, please comment below if you went through a similar situation. Again, the family court system is just not for dads, and we have such an uphill battle that we need to stick together, and we need to encourage each other and give ourselves like positives, and like the things can get better, and just ways of navigating through the situation. So I appreciate you guys watching. If you're going through that stuff right now, I continue, I say prayers for you guys every night. I thank you for watching. May God bless you and your families, and good luck, and may God watch over you in these trying times. God bless.